Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. Construct your life, construct my life. But more importantly, what do I say about this amazing woman? She is so much. She's so inspiring, but more importantly, she is quickly becoming a good friend. The internet gets a lot of bad names, but a little comment on a podcast somebody does turns into a DM, turns into a trip to Tampa. Turns into a blossoming friendship. The one and only Amanda is here. How are you?
Wonderful. Happy to be here.
I am so looking forward to this conversation because I'm thinking to myself the whole morning. I'm like, let's not talk about anything that she normally talks about. Like, let's see if we can get through the whole episode without talking about sales once. Like, that's my game plan, right?
Bring it.
So to give context to the guest, who were you when you were 21? Start there. Who was that person? What were you doing?
I was in music school at University of Southern California, one of the top music schools in the nation. Was following my passion. I had just released my 4th record as a singer-songwriter. I was gigging around Los Angeles and booking tours up the West Coast, hustling, the grind. It was a real time.
It was. And it was the path.
Yeah.
And who are you today?
Well, that path changed a bit. So a bit of context. My father got ill, so then I went down a very long journey of holistic health for the last decade. I also inherited his couple hundred staff in a marketing and sales training company. That was terrifying. I stepped in as CEO 8 years ago. Today, I get to travel around the world, and I've been just in the process of merging the two worlds of teaching how to double your sales in 12 months flat to getting up on a mic in front of a room, and was just in Springfield 2 weeks ago, getting everybody to sing in an auditorium at an event that had nothing to do with music. But it's enough of a defense mechanism to put down the guards enough to then talk about pitching and sales and leads. And so I live in two kind of worlds, and I'm trying to be the bridge between them.
In that moment when you were that 21-year-old and the music was the path and the songwriter, music still plays a part in the world in such a totally different context, right?
Absolutely. Well, if meditation is an altered state of consciousness, a majority of people stop and go silent thinking that they're meditating when really it's doing the antithesis of that, and it's just making your thoughts louder. I do a lot of, when I say I meditate for an hour every morning, people look at me like, how could you sit in silence? I'm like, if you ever came to a meditation with me, it's a jam sesh. I am singing at the top of my lungs. I got my guitar. I'm going into some other universe, which probably everyone thinks I should take ayahuasca, but I'm like, I think I take it every day. I just don't take any kind of drug to do it. So yes, I use it to elevate my mind.
And I think one of the things I was talking about a client today, like he took a new job, funny enough, in the place we're not trying to go, which is sales, but he's in a different environment now with a bunch of savages, totally different company, very growth driven. And he said, look, I'm killing it. But he said, like, I still get like really nervous. Like I have my days where I don't want to make my calls. And I go, Well, because you don't have a routine. If you created a song that was a trigger to get you in the state in order to be that person, then, it's what I tell everybody. Like when I got sober, my little trick was anytime I thought about drinking, I would get on the Peloton for 15 minutes.
Wow.
And I would innately not want to drink anymore after that because I just sweat a little bit. And so it just created, he goes, well, you must have been on the Peloton a lot. I said, oh yeah, 100%. But it just created a different, it shifted the narrative, right? And I think where you're going into what is typically, big companies and they're wearing their things and you bust out with a song and they're like, whoa, like you're almost allowing them to be a part of themselves that maybe they've closed off for so long.
Thank you. I love that story. That's great. Peloton. I haven't heard that.
Well, I think what I did is I made peace that addictive mindset is something that exists within me no matter what. But can I take those addictions from negatives to positives?
Nice.
Right. And even when I'm not, and I'm not saying it's the right thing to do all the time, but when I'm feeling like not myself or like just kind of stuck, I'll go help people like aggressively. And I'm like, okay, so if I'm helping people, maybe it's not the most, maybe it's not the right thing to do in that moment, but I'd rather do that than pound the bottle or go the other way. Right. And I think you have to trade one for the other. I think a lot of people, my biggest issue with people is that they live too much in the black and the white. When you're just subbing out something else. Like there's this word that keeps coming up in my life and I respect it because it's what you and I talked about in our moment, but I also hate the word. And the word is slow down. And the armchair quarterbacks on Twitter say that I'm growing my company too fast. And I'm like, is that a problem that happened in your life? Because we're doing great, right? But then I try to like think to myself, like, why does that word make me so angry? And so there's a meaning behind the word of what it means to me. But if I just reassociated, they're saying just make sure that you see all the corners. They're not actually asking you to slow down. So there's just certain tricks, little mindset tricks. And so is that why you started doing the singing when you spoke? Is because you realized that it got them out of their comfort zone and maybe like change the mood of the room?
Yeah, I spoke at an event. It's the CEO is 37 years old. His name is Don Wenner, and his company owns $1 billion worth of real estate. And they've hit the Inc. 5000 list 10 years in a row. This 37-year-old. It's like, woo, that is impressive. And part of the event was, what's your BHAG? What's your big, hairy, audacious goal? And my BHAG is that I want to, this is something that my mentor taught me and has guided me on this vision of like, why can't we have 1,000 acres of a space where you go and it just feels like heaven on earth? You can reset your mind, you can get back into alignment of what passion and purpose your whole being is about, not just what's in front of you or having to do something because you have to make the money. Like, how can we enrich people's lives and give them a moment where they can recalibrate so they can go back out into the world and have a richer, more full life? And to be able to do that, part of it is through meditation, and meditation in the way that I've explained a bit of using repetition and maybe even a phrase that's positive that can rewire the brain. And that place didn't feel possible to be able to create unless in that moment when I did the keynote an hour later, if I got the whole room to sing, multi-billionaire, hundreds of millions of dollars in the room. And I was like, this is a perfect place to get everyone to sing with me. And yeah, that was the first time I did it because I felt that I was not living up to the potential of what my BHAG was. So that's where it started. And ever since, yeah, I just keep being surprised. I keep thinking, no, I won't include it in this keynote. And then everybody will be like, I've had that song stuck in my head for the last 6 months. You're going to do it, right? I'm like, another sign that I should continue to do this. So I'm very big about watching rooms and seeing how people react and analyzing their reactions and listening. So if I keep seeing indications that people enjoy it and they want to hear more of it, then I'll keep including it. And that's one of those, the singing and the meditation during a sales keynote, doubling your sales keynote, has just continued to stay.
And when you did that, which it helped the room so much, what did it do for you though?
Oh, I couldn't stop smiling. Every time I can't stop smiling. I'm like, oh my gosh, my face hurts because I'm smiling so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the last time I did it, I was like, yeah. So I challenged a room full of 12 people to do it for 10 minutes, to just repeat this phrase for 10 minutes. And at one point, I didn't think I'd make it the 10 minutes. And I'm used to an hour because I was smiling so big. It hurt my face.
And you know, what I think inspires me the most about you is that you are unapologetically you. And I think that you've had to realize who that is while you're lifting up and building a company, you know, by honoring, you know, your father and his legacy and the way that he did business. But what I love right now, and I'm seeing in your post, I'm seeing in the book that you wrote, I'm seeing in all the things, is now it's becoming your thing. And talk about the transition from, you know, honoring his legacy to where you are now. And that's a bridge that doesn't happen overnight. Um, how do you have confidence within yourself to really let it lean more towards your thing and kind of marry the two?
Yeah, so I just spoke at a family legacy event, and I don't know if you know this, but 75% of second generation families lose all the wealth. They fail. I mean, right? 3 out of 4. That is shocking amount of statistics. So I understand why it's so difficult for somebody that's a second generation to take over a business, because I went through it, and I went through it pretty severely, considering my father didn't expect me to step in as CEO. So he never taught me any of his businesses. He never taught me who was the head of the businesses. When people ask me, what's your father do? I'm like, he like speaks from stage, and he's got businesses. I don't really know. Like that was the level of what I knew of my father's businesses. So I can only imagine. I envy those that actually have their parent in the business and they're assisting them. But to take it over, I think the progression started with just asking lots of questions, because I really felt that I shouldn't be there and I didn't have the wherewithal to be able to do this because I was a singer-songwriter. So lots and lots of questions. And the more questions I asked, the more my team said, asking the right questions, keep asking.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I just had to learn how to go inward to find my answers. That was also critical, because everyone wanted to be my best friend. Everyone, sucks up to the one that has no idea what's going on, but technically has the power.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started realizing really fast that the people that were supposedly very kind to me were actually very manipulative. So aggregating information and then being able to discern that information to make a positive step, just based mostly on the power of calming my mind enough to make a logical decision rather than an emotional one. Now, don't get me wrong, I make erratic decisions all the time, but I work really, really hard at coming from a place of logic and reason. That is a huge part of my meditative practice. And I think the biggest place, yes, I've taken my father's. So my father had 12 core competencies on how to double sales. He worked for a billionaire by the name of Charlie Munger. He doubled the sales of 9 different companies for Charlie, all within 12 to 15 months. Then he left there and cold called his way into 60 of the Fortune 500. So he just had an ability to grow businesses in a repeatable manner. He had a framework for growing sales. He was the one that was in the trenches doing all of that work. So when he decided who he would surround himself with in his organization, he surrounded himself with people that had strong enough internal identity that they could fight with him, because majority of the time he was the one that was right because he had so many years of experience. So he was used to battling it out with a lot of his staff. Now, when I came along, I thought, oh, everyone that my father really admired and trusted, I put them up on a pedestal because I felt, if my father said that they were great, then I obviously know that they must be great. And then what I started to realize is that I am not my father. So I can still use his methodology, which I have, because it's timeless methods. I've just taken what he did on faxing and what he did on radio, and I now do it in Instagram DMs and ringless voicemails and Facebook ads. So it's still the same concepts, it's just changing of the tactics, but the biggest change is in the team that I surround myself with, because I am a lover. I'm not a fighter, and I don't have all the answers like my father had. He had a lot more answers in his tool belt than I did. So I have had to surround myself with people that are absolutely brilliant. I am not the smartest person in the room, whereas my father was majority of the time. So I rely on my team to work collaboratively to come up with solutions. And I think I'm a lot more impact driven also because my father was born in the Bronx. He had a chip on his shoulder. He had to prove that he would be worthy of something. Whereas I was born with my father saying, I am sacrificing my entire life so that you can do whatever you want. What are your passions? Pursue them. So singing was my first passion. Now it's more, after watching my father die at 55, and the average CEO has 5 years less life expectancy than the average person because the stress is so heavy. My goal now is, how do I assist businesses to grow, but do it in a way that's simple so that there's less steps, but with each step there's a quantum leap. And if doubling your sales means sacrificing your health or your family, I unsubscribe to that. I would rather be more balanced. So my approach is more holistic. It's surrounded by a lot of people that want to create impact, because that's really important to me. Just like 76% of millennials who feel personally responsible to make the world a better place. So it's very indicative of my generation. But same strategies, minor shift in tactics, and then my culture is very different.
And when you make that shift, as a business, I would assume that the personality of the CEO and the other people that work there also attract a certain client, right? So when you made this shift, did you lose some of those clients, and did they not understand in the direction that you're going towards, the more loving, not as aggressive side? Did that happen as well and coincide?
I have not seen or felt the loss. I've only felt the abundance of being surrounded by clientele that I love. I feel so abundant. We have a client right now, RMI. They're a stem cell company out of Costa Rica, and they are actually assisting people to live longer, healthier lives. I think that is magnificent. That is completely in alignment with my world. We have the largest children's dentist on the West Coast. That's the Super Dentist. And they've taken the theme of like Disneyland and Disney World and merged it with dentistry, which is one of the top 5 most feared things for people in their life, is going to the dentist. And yet you go there and you feel like it's a theme park. I feel that my loving approach and a little bit more carefree and let's have some fun while we do it because life's too short to live otherwise, has only reflected more and more clientele that are just in the same ethos as me. So I don't feel that I've lost I do choose. I'm very particular now about who I work with, and I have said no to some fairly large figures that could have generated tens of millions of dollars, and I have said no to that. But I think my life is richer because of it. And I know because of the experiences that I've had with people that I just don't have the patience anymore for people that will only do something for themselves. I'm a team player.
Yeah, I would say the biggest shift in my personal career was the moment that I stopped sacrificing my values and the time I wanted to spend with the dollar, and having the abundance that you mentioned, and saying, you know what, I'm going to turn down this large check, right? Because I just don't like how this makes me feel anymore, spending time with you. Um, and having, more importantly, having the confidence to stand in that and say, I'm not going to put up with this. Like, and it's hard because money, we're not upset about it, and we got to pay the bills and all that things. But I think you gain so much more by being able to show up to work and be excited about the people you're doing business with, instead of just, drudging through the day or the week or whatever that is for clientele.
Yes.
Does any part of you miss the songwriter part of your life, the freedom, the travel? And you still do that, but
Still do a lot of
still do
travel.
a lot of that, but does any part of that miss those creative outlets, or they have found a different place?
I write a lot of marketing and sales campaigns, and I found that the same place where I used to write a song from is the same place that I write an email campaign or a sales pitch, or like if you look at the video that I used to promote the new edition of my father's book, Ultimate Sales Machine. So we released that last year, and that hit the bestseller list, and it helped us double our sales, and we're up 270% over last year's Q1. So it's going to bear fruit for the next 10 years minimum, which is great. Wow, I totally lost my train of thought. So, but if you look at the video that promoted that book, majority of people, I kept thinking that it would be about, how to get 9 times more leads from the same moves you're already making without having to spend more on marketing budget, or the 3 things holding you back from doubling your sales in the next 12 months, or, the fastest, least expensive way to double your sales. Like, I have all of these fancy sizzle pieces about how to grow sales. And yet the thing that resonated with people the most was the foreword that I wrote, which was a letter. Instead of saying "Dear Reader," which is majority of forewords, it was "Dear Dad." And I have to give credit where credit's due. Julianne Eason was my book coach at that time. Now she works with us here at Chi. But she had suggested that I write a letter to my father. And originally I said, absolutely not. That sounds terrifying. Never in a million years. And it turned into this beautiful, very honest, transparent, a hint of anger, lots of respect. And that became the video that promoted the book, The Ultimate Sales Machine. It was like, I've made many grown men cry from that video. And to me, that was not, even though I wasn't singing in it, I was only speaking with overdubs of montages of my life with my father and things. It felt like a song, like a music video to me. So that was an outlet. And I feel that I try to be as honest and transparent and vulnerable amidst the doubling your sales world. And I think that that's the songwriter in me. For a decade, I worked on how to express myself, and then another decade with my teacher teaching me how to understand self. So a lot of work has gone into that.
And how many times did you rewrite that chapter?
94.
94 times.
I kept saying I have to have written it over 100 times. And then on one plane ride, I was like, I'm going to actually count the number of versions on my computer.
So I don't know if we talked about it when I was down there visiting you, but I didn't really have a relationship with my father for 20 years. We've just reconnected in the last year. We talk every other day, probably now, which is amazing. But then I realized after we reconnected and we had a great time together, he, through that story, had 3 of the men that are in his, my dad was a dentist for 40 years. Now he's in a real estate group, bunch of dentists. because of our story, 3 of those men in that group are purposely trying to reconnect with their kids because we made it work. And what I keep coming back to with your story and my story is that sometimes we have to be strong enough in what we believe in and step into the fire in order to be the catalyst for other people to feel okay with it. And your authentic nature of who you are and your unapologeticness to be you allows the people in your company and your clients to operate in probably the space that they didn't operate fully in. And I think that's why people are drawn to you so much, and why they're so comfortable, because you're giving them permission to say, just be yourself. And for me personally, I can't stand the corporate malarkey and the straight-laced kind of, like, that's not the way I roll. Like, I do weird stuff, like with my clients, with my employees. Like, I like to keep it fun, right? I like to needle them and get them excited, right? You're just trying to change the norm, and your like, I tell one, like, hey, you're my favorite, don't tell anybody else. Like, and she's like, "Shh," and like, that makes her excited, right? But it's like, who says that as like a boss, and where I try to go into, and I'd be curious to get your thought on it. Like, I know there's a time and place in a year or two when I'm more of the president, and I would say the only thing that holds me back, or the only thing that makes me nervous, is like, can I still connect at the level that I do when we have 1,000 employees? Because right now we have 44, right? But then I keep thinking to myself, like, yeah, but you don't change, just the business changes, and you can still be you. And it might take you longer to get to the 1,000 employees, but you're going to do it your way. Is that something you teach your clients too? Because I would say it's probably the only thing that makes me nervous, because I know we're going to be successful. I'm not worried about that, but I don't want to lose what I've created here, right? Do you ever deal with that? Because I know you deal with a lot of big clients, and I'm sure you have some stuff like that.
It definitely takes a lot of effort to keep that feel of, a small business that you love everyone, and then as it grows, how do you keep that culture growing? Yeah, I was just I'm on a board of an IT managed services company. It's the top 1% in the United States, called JMark. It's out of Missouri, and they're the best. That is the best culture I've seen in any company, hands down. Tom Douglas is just a servant leader. That he is the definition of a servant leader. And he went from having 20 staff to now they have 120. It's not 1,000, but still there's so much work every single day. I happened to be there, and they said, hey, would you like to go on our daily walk? And I'm like, you do a daily walk? They're like, yeah, we're in front of computers all the time, so we have a chat channel where we say, hey, anybody else want to go for a walk? And they'll walk the building 3 times as a group, so it's not just one person. Like, that's such a great idea, right? And then I was there during their they had a, what is it called, like a cook-off or something, where once a month they all get together and they celebrate the wins, and they celebrate people who have been there for 6 years, 10 years, 15 years that month, who came on 10 years ago. And then they'll do a cookout where the CEO is cooking hamburgers and steaks for every person in the company, because people love food. Actually, statistically, we did this for a client where people are more happy when you feed them food. It's like one of the easiest ways to boost culture in a company is by feeding your staff.
I love
But
this.
yes.
Yeah, I love this man already. This is amazing. The walk idea.
Yeah.
The walk idea has my mind blown. Yeah.
Oh my God. Adapt or Die is his book he just recently released.
Okay, so we did it. Okay, I'm gonna check that out. Adapt or Die.
His whole idea on people puzzles is fascinating.
People, oh my, okay, this is ridiculous.
Yes.
Because that's how I view people.
Yes.
As a jigsaw puzzle, as a puzzle that you have to figure out, right? And I would say the number one lesson that I could pass on to anybody is that everybody has their different needs and wants. And you have to understand the season of life that they're in. And it's so difficult. I would say the biggest thing that pushes against me is me taking care of myself enough to have the emotional capacity to handle the people. That's it. It's nothing more. But But knowing that that's a core component of our success, and being okay with it, or because here's the weirdest thing, I don't do any work anymore. Like my work is the people. Like,
Yeah.
and so like, I'm like, y'all think I have fun? No, I get to hang out with like lawyers, accountants, insurance people. Like, it's not the fun stuff anymore. But I love, like, okay, I'll just tell you a story that happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, and he'll hear this, so I'm doing it on purpose, and I hope I don't get emotional. So we have a new division of our company, which is a remodel company, and the guy that's running the remodel company, sorry, I won't say your name, so I won't put your business out there, but had an addiction in the past too. So he's sober now. And about 2.5 months ago, he got his car repossessed. And he was very embarrassed. He's had a rough couple of months. He's very embarrassed to tell me. And my immediate reaction was, fuck that car. I was like, that is who you were. It's not where you're going. I said, we're in a different place now. Okay. So I find out through meeting and knowing him that his dream for his entire life, this is a 34-year-old man, is to drive a truck. That's it. Okay. Well, I bought my fiance a car, and I got him, he took her truck for the construction company, and he's bawling his eyes out yesterday. And what like, just so we're clear, that's a vehicle that needs to be used to do the job. So it's all relative. Like the purpose is there, the need. But then I thought to myself, and Cassie said, like, how much more can we do? She's like, how much more can we do for these people? And I realized that the true way to create impact at scale is through small businesses. Like, I tangibly touch the kids of my employees, even though they're not my kids. Like, I met another one who's like the smartest 7-year-old I've ever met in my entire life. I bought her like a science experiment that I'm giving her today. Like, like they want to ride in my truck. Like, these things, if you're just so focused on the dollar, they're going to pass you by. And when I see you out with your companies, when you're on site or whatever, like, it just feels like such a family. I mean, I know it's an easy word to say, but it just feels like you've picked the right clients, you're in the right energy, they're in the right energy, and it just feels like, it doesn't even feel like work when I see your videos.
Oh, I'm very lucky. I think it's come from a lot of pain. When I first came into the business, and I had a lot of lawsuits. I had some really vicious people and experiences, all the way up to like having to get the FBI involved. I mean, it was several years of a lot of horrific people problems. And I even took 2 years where I only spent a couple of hours in the business, and mostly just was in a garden at Divine Bliss. I took you there, right? I talked to more plants than people. And because I had to heal. It was so vicious. When people see money, they attack you. So I had to learn how to be much stronger. And then after that, I said, okay, if I'm going to go back in here, and if I'm going to do this, it has to be with great people, because life's too short to have to deal with, the manipulations and the lies and the anger and the backstabbing. I believe that people that give and serve and believe in doing good by people win. So I surround myself with those people.
And in those dark moments when they were coming after you, like, how did you keep going?
A lot of it was Divine Bliss International. That's the nonprofit. And my teacher, her full title, Sarvalokama, Her Holiness Shri 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 1008 Guruji Punamji. It's fairly long, but I call her Guruji.
Yeah. And she'll mention her every 5 seconds if you hang out with her.
Well, I love her a lot. She's been very influential in my life. So yeah, she was a huge part of that process.
And I would imagine, a lot of people have problems with this, but there was 2 different worlds, right? There was a world where the people were suing you and people were coming after you, and the business was new and different. but you didn't have to be any of those things at Divine Bliss.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, because I've never asked you this. Was there any thoughts ever, and those lawsuits went on for a while, was there any thoughts ever of like you weren't going to continue down that road?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And what ultimately, stepped you in? I know that she told you that you were ready to be CEO, but what ultimately gave you the strength to kind of jump back in there and do it, do you think?
I think there's several different levels of that. So the first 2 years, I hired and fired different C-suites to fill that void. And then I stepped in as CEO, and we got some good traction. I doubled clients multiple years in a row. I increased our leads by 1,176%. I mean, we did some really wild things, but the lawsuits still kept going. So that was difficult. It took me 7 years to finalize and clear my father's estate. That's a lot of dedication.
Well, more importantly, I keep thinking about that's a lot of dedication from the other end. Like, meaning the people that were trying to sue you, like normally they peter out with energy.
No, they were pig-headed.
Well, he trained them well.
My
Yeah,
father had trained them too well.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
So did that ever affect like trust in your world with people close to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd completely given up faith in humanity. I was like, there is nothing good left in this world.
Mhm.
That's why I will only speak to flowers and vegetables. I literally was like, sayonara. You
And
guys
where's the trust now? How are you in your day to day with the trust with other people?
much better. I still have more to go for sure, but I have a great team around me now that I trust. I don't feel lonely at the top like I had for so many years. I am on the same page with my team, which is also critical. I don't feel like I'm trying to run someone else's company. It is my company. And like I said, the more that I am me, and I have used social media as a means too, to kind of just document my journey. And in that documentation of my journey, I find that I recruit more staff that are like me. The last like 7 hires I've made have all been from people that follow me on social media. And that brings in clientele too that are great.
So what I want to talk about is some fun stuff. So you said that did you live on a plane basically for 2 years? Is that what you told me? You basically, so you had no residence
Right.
and you just flew around.
Yeah, yeah. It was a year and a half. It wasn't 2.
Okay.
But I didn't spend more than 2 weeks in any location. And I would just wake up, it'd be Wednesday, and I'd be like, where am I going tomorrow? And I'd get on a plane and I'd go. So if someone said to me, like, I had a conversation with John Lee Dumas. I don't know if you know Entrepreneurs on Fire.
Mm-hmm.
So I was texting with John Lee Dumas, and he's like, and at the time I was in Minnesota. It's very cold. I hadn't like left the building in the 2 weeks because I was so terrified that I would get frostbitten. I mean, I'm from California. This is not normal. Minnesota's not normal. And he sent me a picture of his backyard, which is gorgeous, like this beautiful pool overlooking all of Puerto Rico. And he's like, well, yeah, if you decide to come down here, you're welcome to stay. And I'm like, booking ticket right now. Like I literally within 48 hours was in his backyard.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, don't say it to me and not mean it, because I joke, another one of my staff invited me to go climb Kilimanjaro, which is one of the largest freestanding mountains in the world. And it was on a Thursday. And I said yes. And by Monday I was in Africa with no training whatsoever, which was really, really stupid. I don't recommend that one. But yes, I definitely lived a very spontaneous year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But you did You did too. You were.
Yeah, and it still goes on. I found two things. There's two rules I live by. One, if somebody invites you somewhere, you say yes. Okay, that's the number one rule. The second one is if you don't want to do the thing, do the thing. Every time I don't want to go to the networking event, or I don't want to jump on the podcast, or I don't want to go to this thing, something amazing happens. And so those are the rules I live by, because for too long I held myself back because I was swimming in mediocrity. And the fact of the matter is I would, people say, oh, you've been to the most beautiful places and all that stuff. Yeah, that's all true. And I have the pictures to prove it. But what it's taught me more than anything is that we're all connected. What it's taught to me is I wish everybody in Utah and Pennsylvania and Nashville and Austin would understand that you're all the same. You all have problems and you're all scared, and business is this. We say that we're so different, and we say that we're not. Okay, I'm sorry. I've been to every state that exists. I've been to Europe. No, you're not. And if you would realize that you're super connected and you understand that everybody needs the same thing, which is an opportunity, love, and to believe in themselves, then you can create a space where anything's possible. And that's why I think that goals, and this is really hard because I'm the mindset coach guy, I think goals are useless. And the reason is, if you show up in the highest form of yourself, then you have no idea what's possible. Because goals are only a past representation of how you view yourself. You can only make a goal from how you view yourself yesterday. But if you show up in the highest form of yourself, and one of the tricks I did was I had a character that I created, this was through coaching, that in my early 20s, that was called Tasmanian Devil. And that guy got you in rooms that you shouldn't be in and everything, but that guy didn't close the deal. That guy was not a follow-through guy. He just didn't, that guy didn't get deals closed. He was putting deals together, but he was getting pushed out of them. And so we created a new character, and that character was Clint Eastwood. And it was Clint Eastwood in the fedora with the cigarette hanging out of his mouth and the poncho. And Clint Eastwood didn't run to deals, deals ran to him. Clint Eastwood did networks came to him. And so anytime I would walk in a room, I would just say Clint Eastwood, and it would remind me. And then slowly that Tasmanian Devil went away. And I just became this new version, right? That was because I was around people that were telling me like, hey man, like, this is great, but this is a lot. And so where I've focused on the last couple of years is I have themes for the year, and the same theme keeps carrying on for a couple of years. And that's emotional stability. Like, you can be super passionate, but if you're running a company with multiple people's lives in your hands, you can't make passionate emotional decisions based on how you feel, based on not sleeping enough or not eating right. And so when you're running your own company, what do whatever you want, but not when you have people's lives in their hands, and they're feeding their kids. And I would say that's the biggest maturity stretch for me as an owner. And it took, as you said, took a lot of pain to get there. And I think that's the theme, right? Like the mountain of, if your pain, my pain, it took a lot to get to this where we're smiling and it's happy. And this morning was not great. I'm dealing with an employee, but I felt so much. I just kind of smiled. I was like, this is kind of cool. Like, I get to like unpack this Rubik's Cube of just like ridiculousness. Right. But like, that's when you become like, not that that's not the word I want to use, but when you become a friend to the pain instead of avoid it. But here's what I want to talk about. Okay. So she might get a little blushy, and I got a couple minutes, but so the guy that you see today, folks, is a better man for the 12 hours that I spent with this lovely human right here. And she goes, you know what? Nobody talks in person anymore. It's all over Zoom. And I said, well, I do. And I go, I'll book a plane ticket. So I booked a plane ticket. And what she doesn't know is I tried to talk myself out of the trip like 15 times because I was super stressed and didn't want to go. And my fiance was like, you know what happens every time you don't want to go? It's the right thing to do. And so I flew down there and I met her at Divine Bliss. And she said the greatest thing to me ever. She goes, I feel like you're about 300 miles an hour. We are going to walk around the garden until you dial it down a couple miles per hour. And I had the most amazing day. We walked on the beach, we had lunch, we talked. It was what she doesn't understand is this is my first true role with multiple employees as a CEO. And it was so nice to talk to somebody else that wasn't my COO, wasn't my employee, wasn't my owners, to have that connection with somebody that knew that I was going through and kind of to reposition my thoughts. And I just can't, literally, like, I'm getting emotional thinking about, I can't thank you enough for giving me the gift of that day. It was just it's just carried me on so much.
It's very rare that people actually do what they say they're going to do, and the fact that after a tweet that led to a Zoom call and then you showed up in Florida says a lot about who you are as a human being. And I'm so grateful that we've budded a friendship, and I look forward to all the more experiences that we have to laugh about.
I can't wait. So if people want to find out about the book, they want to find out more about the company, how would they do that?
ultimatesalesmachine.com.
And what's crazy is it's not a sales book. But if you're looking for a book to level up yourself and your company, I've read it twice. It's a must. You really need to do it. I've got my sales guys reading it right now. So, guys, take, what people don't understand is that sales gets a bad rap. But I think the ultimate sales machine, the one that you need to sell the most, is the person staring in the mirror. And if you're not sold on what you're doing or who you are, I don't really know what you're doing. So pick up the book. If you pick up the new version and go right to the chapter with their dad, and then start back from the beginning. And if people want to connect with you, how would they do that?
I am everywhere online, but I spend more of my time on Instagram. And Amanda Holmes was taken by some woman who doesn't use her Instagram, so I had to go with my salsa name, which is Amandita Holmes. So Amandita Holmes is where you'll find me.
No chance I'm calling you your regular name now. Guys, if you like this episode, send it to a friend, and we'll see you next time.